Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. The only podcast where it's okay to talk in band. On this podcast, you will be able to hear conversations with some of the greatest names in wind band conducting, composing, and arranging. We'll also visit with great college, high school, middle school, and elementary band directors to get their thoughts on various aspects of being a band director. We'll have regular check-ins with instrument specialists, music dealers, and instrument repair professionals. And if that's not enough, we'll even have regular conversations with Dr. Tim, who will help keep us motivated. That's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. And now, here's Charlie.
Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. This is our 10th podcast, and I again want to thank you, the listeners, for dedicating your most precious commodity, your time, to listening to our conversations. I have been proud to present you with an all-star lineup of guests, and today is no different. As I approach my 67th year of life, and as I listen to today's conversations, I was reminded how, as we age, as we gain more experience, we change. Though the things that were important when we first started teaching still matter, I find that as we travel along this teaching career path, as we log experience and years, there are more and more things that matter. As you listen to today's conversations, I'm sure you will hear three distinct voices from three wonderful people who are at three different points in their careers. We begin with Josh Breen. Josh is a first-year band director from Southern Illinois. Josh is one of those people that simply will not allow himself to fail. He realizes he needs to make connections with his students, and as you will hear, has set up a virtual band room situation where students can come after class and just talk and hang out. Next, we'll visit with Rachel Maxwell, Director of Bands at Trauber Middle School in Oswego, Illinois. Rachel is a dynamo. She was on fire the first day I met her, and she's still on fire today. You will hear a passion for teaching music, and you will hear that she still realizes the importance of making and keeping connections with her students. Finally, we'll speak with Richard Floyd, the senior statesman of music and music education from the state of Texas. Richard is an amazing man, a great teacher, and one of the smartest people I have ever been around. To put it simply, Richard knows how to get things done. He did it in the classroom. He did it as the state director of music for the Texas Interscholastic League, and he is doing it today as he continues guest conducting and presenting clinics nationally. In addition, Richard will tell us about his new book that is set to release this fall. Three professionals at three stages of their careers. That's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. We'll be right back.
Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends is made possible through the support of Hal Leonard, Eastman Musical Instruments, and Vandercook College of Music.
So joining me on the podcast today is Josh Breen, and Josh is in his first year of teaching. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on, Dr. McGinney. It's wonderful to be here.
So Josh, let's get one thing going here. You know, I know you were a student at Vandercook, and I know that we've worked together, but for the sake of this podcast, would you just please call me Charlie?
Yeah, I can call you Charlie on this podcast.
Okay, thank you so much. So Josh, tell us where you're teaching and what you're teaching.
I am teaching in the Quincy Public Schools, and I'm teaching band at Isles Elementary for 4th and 5th grade, the 6th grade band at the junior high, and I assist with the 7th, the 8th grade band, and the high school bands and orchestras.
And then you probably drive the bus and help prepare lunch, correct?
Oh yeah, everything underneath the sun.
So Josh, what made you want to become a band director?
Actually, when I was uh, auditioning for Vandercook and I was filling out the application, there was the essay question, and that was the exact essay question. And the same answer holds to it today. I When I was in junior high and high school, the band was a safe haven for me, and it was where I went to during my days. Is what I looked forward to every day, and that's what I wanted to provide for my students: a safe haven and a class that they felt welcomed in.
So you graduated in May and you're in your first year of teaching. So what's been the biggest thing that surprised you the most?
Um, when I graduated, I noticed that during my student teaching, really, how much more time you need to do to plan. I knew there was time planning, but I thought, oh, you'll spend like, hour or two a day planning. It's so much more than that. I do a PowerPoint every day for my class. So that way, not only is there the auditory, but there's the visual aspect. So if there's any directions, I put that up on the board. I copy music for everybody. I don't only do one lesson plan. I have a lesson plan in my book that I have up on the podium with me. I have the lesson plan with the PowerPoint. And then I also put one on a monthly chart so I know I'm not overstepping where I'm doing too much of one piece or I'm not forgetting something that was supposed to be on the daily and monthly checklist and quarterly checkoffs for us to do.
So did you ever imagine in your wildest dreams, did you ever imagine that you in your first year of teaching there would be this national pandemic and your whole life would be turned upside down?
Absolutely not. I mean, this is something that's blindsided everybody in the entire district and all around us.
So what's been your biggest challenge?
Uh, my biggest challenge so far has got to be just trying to replace that retired teacher. I was a retired teacher who'd been in for like multiple years on end, and trying to get the students to warm up to me the same way that they warmed up to that young person that left. So
So the coronavirus hits, schools are closed. What was your first reaction?
my first reaction was, oh my gosh, a break, because it was contest season and we were all so tired every day. We'd be pulling 16-hour days. And so I thought, oh, thank God, a little bit of extra time. But then shortly after that, it was like, okay, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my students? How are we gonna, like, does this mean that we're tacking on extra weeks onto it? Are we going further into summer? Just trying to pin down some logistical things.
So take me through your distance learning day. How are you teaching your students in classes?
So, how I'm teaching my students in classes is in our district, we do not have one to one. So, and for those of you who don't know what one to one is, we don't have one device to one student, and not everybody has access to internet either, because we service a lot of rural students in the area and they don't have access to internet. So, we reach out through Zoom and we reach out through other means, email, phone calls. I've tried to contact almost every student through either email or phone call, and just let them know that I'm here to help, and that I have usually about every day about one, if not two, meetings a day with different faculties, different teachers, different students. And then I have open Zoom times that I get in on a Zoom call and I spread it out to like that class, and I'll say, look, this is the time each week that I've blocked out. If you have any questions, to come in and message me. And then I use the Remind Message app to just get like instant feedback with parents. But it's very different than face to face talking like I'm used to.
So have there been any activities or assignments that you feel have worked really well that your kids have really connected to?
So, an activity that actually just happened yesterday that was remarkable, I felt, was Kahoot. I was in an open Zoom meeting with my sixth grade band, and we had a few students come in with questions. And after a while, they were just sticking around. They didn't have any more questions. They just want to hang out and want to stick around. So I was like, what has your other classes been doing? And they said Kahoot, and they loved it. So I got on Kahoot, and using the screen share on Zoom, I was able to do Kahoot with them. And oh my gosh, they had such a fun time. And there were music Kahoots that we did. And the fun thing was that I remember that in my student teaching, I used Kahoot for my Ed TPA. So I knew all about that. And so I was having a fun time with them. They were having a fun time. And that was something that worked really well for us.
So being someone that has no idea what you just said, so spell Kahoot for me.
Kahoot is spelled Kahoot. And it's an online platform that is for educational quizzes. It has quizzes online that people can do, where everybody has their own device, like let's say a phone or something, and they can answer the questions. And depending on if they get the right answer and how fast they answer the question, they get points based on that, and it's scored. And then you're on a leaderboard and you're trying to like race against your other classmates, and it's answering questions that are educational. For instance, one of the ones we did was on music terminology. And so, one of the questions was, what is a crescendo? What does crescendo mean? And like, there were 4 answers. You had to pick the right one out of the 4, like multiple choice question. And then based on if you got the right answer and how fast you answered that right answer, you got points. And at the end, it scored you on a leaderboard, and it showed first, second, third place. And then it told you what place you were and everything like that. It was really fun.
Well, I could see what the kids would really get engaged with that.
Yes.
That's really neat. So have you received any feedback, positive or negative, from students and parents about this whole situation?
I've received both positive and negative feedback. I've received many emails of like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for reaching out. It's wonderful to hear from you. And like hearing that, some teachers are reaching out more than others, and that they're just like, they're so happy to hear from us. And then I've also gotten negative ones. One of the ones was I have a couple different emails and a couple different ways that parents could get in touch with me. I wasn't checking one of them because I'd never gotten messages through that one. So somebody sent me a message 2 weeks prior, and I finally got on and I finally saw that message. And we all make mistakes. And so I've learned from that mistake, and I check that email now daily to make sure I don't have another one of those mistakes. So that parent was not so happy with me when I emailed back 2 weeks later.
I'm sure you explained that you went to a box that you didn't check. So
yeah, so
they'll get over it. They'll get over it. So Josh, when the virus ends and you get back to meeting your students face to face again, is there anything from this distance learning time that you're going to take and integrate into your day-to-day routine?
Yeah, I think the biggest one I'm going to take away from this is that I just want to become more personal with my students a little bit. I was so focused on in my first year so far of just, teaching curriculum, and not building that relationship of, like student to teacher, and just like, building that camaraderie like I felt when I was in junior high and high school, that made me want to share it with students. And I need to build that relationship. And through the Zoom meetings I'm doing now, students will be on for an hour just to hang out, and I'll talk with them just casually and, ask them how they're doing and how they're doing in other classes, and just trying to build that relationship a little bit more, and bringing that back into the classroom a little bit as well of, like asking students how they're doing, how they're just doing in life. Because again, that social emotional learning is, we can be a big proponent of that. And, I want to bring some of that back into the classroom.
Josh, your positive attitude and your energy and your can-do, man, it's contagious. I just have so much respect for what you're doing and who you are. I know you're going to be a great success in your teaching career. So I wish you the best. Give your mom and dad my best. And thanks for joining us on the podcast.
And thank you so much for having me on.
Josh Breen is going to become a great band director. You can hear the energy in his voice, and I know that despite the situation, he will find a way. He's a talented musician who loves people and is determined to make a difference. And I know he is going to do just that.
Vandercook College Music is proud to support Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Vandercook is the only college in the nation solely devoted to the practical education of the school music teacher. If you have a student who wants to teach music, or if you or someone you know is looking for a great, practical Master of Music education program, then look no further than Vandercook College of Music in Chicago, Illinois. Vandercook also has the largest array of on-campus and online classes in their Mecca continuing education program. To learn more about Vandercook, visit vandercook.edu.
So joining us on Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and Friends is a wonderful young lady who does a terrific job at Trauber Middle School in Oswego, Illinois. Her name is Rachel Maxwell. Rachel, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Rachel, when you first came to Oswego, in what year?
1995 was my first year here. I actually started teaching in 93 at a neighboring district. I did elementary band for a couple years over in West Aurora, which is a great band district, a lot of history over there. And I knew Margene Pappas just peripherally, knowing who she is, of course. And I saw her at a like the Fox Valley Music Festival or something, and she was explaining that she had this position open in her district, and I was all going, like, well, I know the perfect person. And I was describing this friend of mine who I thought would be great for the job because I had no intention of leaving West. I enjoyed it. It was a good first gig. And then she said, well, what about you? And it hadn't even, and I thought, oh, well, maybe that would be good. So she got me into interview, and man, thank God I ran into her that day, because that was really one of the benchmark defining moments of my life, when my life took a different turn than I thought it was going to, running into her and her suggestion I come in and talk with her, because coming in with Margene was just an unbelievably good experience for me, in that I had her there as a mentor, and she had had my position for many years. And then she went to the high school, of course. So her guidance and what she had established. And so, they always say it's so hard to replace somebody who's been successful, a legend. Well, I had that situation, but she was still there to support me and to help me out. So anytime I had like pushback or any sort of, freaking myself out, she was there to really help, advise. And this is what has worked in the past. This won't. Try this. You're on your own for this one. And she was still there to make sure that, I didn't crash and burn right away. But that was an amazing opportunity. And, even to this day, I just am so grateful for the serendipity of just running into her and that happening that way.
I ran into Margie and Pete. Actually, I went and visited them in Arizona in January, and they're doing terrific. And we recounted those days of when you and Dan came to the district, and she just relished in those days. So since then, since 1995, 93, whatever it was,
Right.
how's your philosophy of teaching changed?
Well, I surprisingly, some things have remained, consistent, because people evolve, but you never really change. But I think when I came in, I was much more hard-nosed about things. I think a lot of us are, type A personality. So, having my own success as a musician, you come in thinking that you're going to be able to impose these things onto an ensemble or onto kids. And because you said it, or because that's what you expect, that's what they'll do. And that's a pretty steep learning curve that I think we all go through those first couple of years, which is fine because it's what has to happen. I'm still I still am very picky and particular and intense about my expectation, but I'm probably completely opposite in the process than I was when I started. I was very driven to what am I getting to? And now our process is much more of the concern and supporting the needier kids, the weaker kids, the kids who aren't the all-stars. When I first came in, I focused on the rock stars in the band. Well, I've got a great this and that, and I've got this great trumpet player. Well, they'll survive without me no matter who's in front of them. Not that they don't get a good experience, but now I've really evolved into understanding that my role is really to support the kid who's not the rock star, support the weakest person in my band. And if I can help them become successful, it pushes, all boats rise kind of thing. And much, much more focused on my relationship with the kids and the parents and all of us coming out of whatever situation we're in, with all of us feeling like we're winners, we're accomplishing something, what we're doing is worth our time and energy, and much more concerned with our relationship at the end of it, rather than me being right or wrong at the end of it.
Right. I had a class a long time ago in curriculum, and the professor said, in curriculum, the process is the product. And that's kind of where you are, instead of getting to what. Now you're focusing on the how, and I think that's the real mark of a great teacher. So, what other things do great teachers bring to a classroom?
Well, I mean, it's particular in our field. I was thinking about this, and I've told a lot of student teachers and a lot of people this: no ensemble that you have a right to be in front of will outplay you. So I don't think any ensemble I'm standing in front of, unless it's by some fluke I get a guest conduct some very, very high end artistic group. My day to day home bands, my home ensembles, my home kids, they're not going to exceed as an ensemble my own musical uh, expectation, my own musicianship. So I have to be the very best musician I can possibly be. I have to have the best musical and technical ears I possibly can to help them get to the next step. And I've seen a lot of good musicians come out, but it's being that great musician mixed with the ability to not just tell kids what the solution is, but the steps to get to that solution. Even higher level bands, even higher level kids or musicians, you might not have to say as much, or you might not have to give them as much pedagogical support, but it's not enough to tell the kid, I want you to get to point B. You have to tell them what's A, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, take them there and, scaffold for them. And I know that's like a term that they use in all general ed, but the scaffolding in an ensemble rehearsal is what gets every student to rise, every student to achieve, every student to master. And the frustration that comes along with that, the patience you have to have, the perseverance, the kind of a toughness factor as a director, that this is wearing me out, they're wearing me down, but you know what? I can stick to it. I can make it, chip by chip by chip, chip away at it. And I think the third big element, if there's going to be three things: musicianship, just that process of learning, and then expectation. My kids always meet my expectations. And as soon as they do, then it's notched up another step. And sometimes they get frustrated with us. I have a fantastic colleague, Josh Johnson, and he feels very strongly the same way, which is why he has the job, because we're different in a lot of ways, but we both understand our expectation sets the goal, sets the star for the kids. And we have real serious heart-to-hearts with them that me pushing you, me expecting, me demanding your best is the highest respect and compliment I can give you as a human, because you're capable. If I baby you, that's insulting. That means you're a baby. And when I don't baby you, when I push, when I sometimes pull you there, it's because I can see that. I can literally see and hear in my mind's eye and ear what you are going to become. And you have that. And most of the kids start really understanding that, because we try to talk to them about that frequently, that our belief in them is the reality of what we see.
So with the coronavirus, it's completely turned education upside down, especially for bands and band students and band directors.
Yeah.
So have you used any activities that have worked particularly well?
Well, we're really blessed in that we made sure all our kids got their instruments home before this went down. We kind of saw it coming. So everybody has an instrument. Those that don't have instruments, I actually went over, put on the gloves and mask, got permission, went in the building, picked up instruments and drove. I live in Oswego now, my town. So I drove around and left instruments on people's porches, left binders on people's porches. All our kids have a device, either school checked out, band checked out, or their own, like an iPad or a computer. And every single kid has a smart music subscription, which for us has enabled us to continue playing. Now, we've kind of set up the first month of this as we wanted to just establish habits with the kids and just get a routine started. Like every day, you're going to have these 3 little exercises. You're going to have a warm up, a rhythm set, and an etude. 10 to 15 minutes every day. Just make it part of your daily routine of school, is that you're going to play your instrument. And we haven't been collecting the actual grades on that. We've just been tracking that. The kids have gotten on, tried to do quality work, and had their horn on their face. Now, to help that, because those aren't the most fun things to do, we did have a solo recital that's supposed to happen in a couple weeks in real time, but we moved it onto online. And so the kids all had their material. They've had it for months. and they're going to be putting their solos on Flipgrid for us so that we can easily grade them. And we are leaving them public so the kids can see each other. We have had some kids be nervous about that, but I said, well, it was going to be a live recital. So if you get super nervous, just put your camera, on your stuffed animal or your brother or a plant or something after you introduce yourself. So we don't have to see you if that's freaking you out. And so we have a little rubric. We'll grade them on those so that they're still working for their solos. And it's kind of cute because some kids have already turned it in. It's not due till Monday. And they're kind of like, they got dressed up. Like some put their band uniforms on to do it on the video, which I didn't expect at all, but I was like, oh, my heart. We've tried to do 2 or 3 fun things each week. Like we did Talent Tuesday, where they can do any talent that we don't know about or aren't completely aware of. They can demonstrate or discuss on a Flipgrid on that day. We've had lots of like enrichment things. I've sent out fun online games or cool videos of the Marine Band or just different things so that if a kid is bored and they happen to click on it, they might see something that would intrigue them or make them want to watch for a few extra minutes or do something that just completely for enjoyment. We've also really tried to focus on social emotional well-being of the kids as our first priority. So each day we also send out a little, hey, for today, try to do something nice for your parents that you don't normally do. Help with a chore today that you don't normally do. Do you have a friend who could use a message from you today? Just to help them know that we're thinking of them as people first. And then another cool thing we did is I have a survey I sent out to the parents that's ongoing where if their kid has a birthday coming up or they're feeling a little down or need more encouragement, the parents can fill out the form, shoot it to us with the info, and then we can either send the kid a message, give them a call, drop a card off in their mailbox. I made a Jib Jab account so we can send funny videos of me and Josh's faces doing crazy things, just so the kids know that, they matter to us. We're really thinking about them as people first. We want the instrument on their face second, but their mental health and just their morale and just their looking forward to the day when we're together again is the most important.
So do you find that online teaching takes more time than face-to-face teaching?
It's exhausting. Middle school kids are not particularly good technical readers or a lot of adults as far as following instruction when it's in a written format. And so this amplifies that, of course. We're something that I could tell the whole class once, maybe take a couple questions, state it in a different way so that everybody understands it, demonstrate it. We're now finding that we have to do that 15 times to each individual kid that writes us an email asking us a question about it or a parent. We've also devoted a lot of time tracking down the kids that weren't doing their work. Are you okay? Do you need help? What can I do for you? What can we do to help support you through this? Do you need we have several kids that Josh and I both meeting on a regular basis on one-on-one. They play I get my horn out, we play their exercises and things with them because that's really the only way that they can motivate themselves to do any sort of work right now because they're having a hard time with this. So I feel like I've been, as soon as I get up in the morning until I go to bed, I'm pretty much online because my feeling is the stress level among families and kids is so high right now that if somebody reaches out and wants information or has a question and I see that, I'd rather answer them sooner than later so that, if they're reaching out, they have the need to know whatever they're asking me or inquiring about. And I feel like, man, if I could take one thing off their plate of stress by getting right back to them, I can answer emails on my phone while I'm watching TV, so by the weekend, I'm ready to have a weekend and just, watch something on Netflix or whatever. But I think this has been really important for us to walk the talk. Like we talk a lot as band directors about bands of family, and now's the time to prove it and really show the parents and kids that we'll go above and beyond to make sure they are okay and better than okay. And if that means I answer emails while I watch TV, then that's fine. I'm happy to do it.
So if I was a middle school teacher right now, there would be 2 huge questions that would be haunting me. And so here's the first one. What am I doing to ensure that when classes come back and we're face to face, those kids continue in the program, and their butts are in our seats. What are you doing to ensure that?
I think all those extra things. We had a family trivia night that we invited everybody to that we did online. Every single time a kid emails or communicates with us, I always say, "We really miss you. I can't wait to see you again. I hope everything's okay with everybody at your house." We're just making sure that every interaction with those kids has like kind of an emotional, like, hey, you're important to us. We need you. We can't wait to see you again. You're so important to us. Um, and pushing to parents, like, because the parents are, if the parents like, oh, this is too much stress, it's too big a pain, you're not doing it next year. That's a big part of why kids decide to or not do it. And so every interaction with a parent is, how can we help? How can we help make this easier for you guys at home? Or what's the stress? Or can I bring an iPad over that works better? Or, just any way that we can make it in a real way that we had their backs, that we're their people, that this is where, we're really going to belong and take care of them. We try to send that message every way we can.
I also think it's important that you're keeping them playing, and that's
Oh yeah.
the hook too, that they're gonna want to keep playing and kind of show off what they've done when they get back.
Oh
So,
yeah.
how about recruiting students in the fall?
Well, if you see me like start scratching and muttering to myself, this is why, because this is my biggest stress right now, because our recruiting was supposed to happen March 12th and 13th for the fall.
Right.
Well, we saw it coming. We had been shut down yet, but I went to my principal early that week and said, there is no way we're having 150 beginners come in and spit on me if this is going down, if this is happening, we need to postpone this. So my thinking was that, we'd take a week off, we'd be gone for spring break, and we'd do our recruiting in May when we came back. Well, obviously that's not happening. So I have been talking to people all over the country. I've been talking to the people at GIA Publishing about their Gordon Tamber preference test, moving that online. I've been collecting things. So I put together a survey of all the stuff we asked the kids at their appointments normally. Then I pieced in the videos from the Army Field Band where they show each instrument. And then I asked the kids to choose their top 3 that they would like. I also collected a lot of information from the kids, like, what kind of grades, what kind of support do they receive at school, gifted, supported services, etc. And then do they have piano, just all sorts of things that we'd normally want to know. I'm taking those survey results and taking the kids' top choices, and we're going to do an online meeting, a virtual meeting, where they're going to get 2 times, like flute class will have one on maybe Friday, tomorrow, and one on Saturday, so they can pick a time. And Josh, my partner, and our student teacher and myself will be in on the meeting. And one of us will lead as far as like showing some embouchure ideas. Can everybody show me your lips? Let's try to do, can you act like you're, and kind of look at their lips. While one of us is leading, the other 2 have a rubric with some checkoffs, and they have a list of the kids, and we're going to be marking who's in a good place. Most kids are going to get their first choice, because when it comes down to it, unless something's super weird, I feel like at this point I can get anybody going almost on any instrument. The one that we're going to be really picky about, though, and I'm doing first, is percussion. We're doing that tonight, because we usually take 12 percussion, and we have like 22 kids who have it as their first choice. So tonight at the meeting, and they know this, I sent it out, they need to perform a piano example for us of their best playing. They're going to do an 8-bar sight reading that I found real easy, just, no chords or anything, 2 parts, but real easy. I'm going to do some coordination exercises with them so they can see my hands and mirror. And while that's going on, Josh and Morgan will be scoring the kids out as on the rubric that they'll have in front of them. And so we told the kids already, about half of you will get percussion, and then the other half, we'd like you to come to the meeting for your second choice instrument and see if you would like to pick your second or third choice. But we told all the kids, you'll get your first, second, or third choice for instrument, but just keep an open mind, because we've never done it like this before. And then when school starts, we normally have a summer pre-band camp for the beginners, but I'm sure we won't be able to do that. So we're just going to have to the most important thing is get them in the room in band. Then I'll figure it out.
Yeah. And there's some rumor, hate to say this, but there's some rumor that classes won't start until January.
I have heard that also. And you know, when I get that information, I'll cross that bridge. But I mean, the number one thing at that point is going to be to engage and capture and excite these kids about what we're doing. Because obviously I'm not starting beginners remotely, but I am going to teach them about their instrument remotely.
Right.
They can, there's quite a bit they can learn about their instrument and about music before we actually get it in their hands. And I probably emphasize that and try to just make it as kid friendly, upbeat, positive, something they look forward to as much as possible. And then we'll hammer out the technical specifics later when we're in person.
So I'm going to ask you a fun question. If you could have a conversation with any musician in the world who ever lived, who would it be, and what would you want to talk about?
Okay, this is kind of a weird answer because all my musician rock stars, like the people I fangirl out over, it's when I walk around Midwest. You know what I mean? Like those are the people that if I see them, I'm like, oh, it's Jerry Junkin. Oh my God. You know, like I fangirl. So I feel like I have access to all these people a little bit, you know, because they're all all the great people are excited and willing to share whatever. So mine's going to go a hair different direction. I have two stepdads. One raised me when I was a little tiny baby and girl. And then I have a fabulous, fantastic dad from like my middle school age and on. But my stepdad who raised me passed away about 11 years ago, very, very young, 56. He was a fantastic musician, but a rocker. Like he wanted to make it as a rock star. And so I grew up going to gigs, like at bars with my mom, and people would be like, why have you been to, you know, Charlotte's Web in Rockford? I'm like, I announced the band opening. So I was always in the like rock band scene as a little kid. And my dad was in Rockford, and I, you know, that's where I'm from. I'm at Rockford County. And we didn't have the greatest relationship as adults when I became an adult. And he actually has never seen an ensemble that I've taught or led. And I think it'd be really a cool thing for us to share, of just him being on the rock end of things and actually getting me really excited about band and music. And he's the one who really ignited it all for me and got me like, well, of course I'll do band because that's what people do. They're musicians. And sharing that with him. And then also through my husband, some of the really great networking and connections we've developed through like NAMM and just the recording arts. And that would be such a cool connection for him to have with his interest in, you know, studio music work and the rock end of things. So if he could still be around, I think he'd be pretty excited with the stuff going on. And I thank him. And I mean, him getting me excited has led to, we figured out we've started about 3,500 beginners since I've been at Trauber. So and a lot of those guys are all band directors now. So the ripple effect is amazing. You know, one teacher, one parent who instills it, then all these kids who then pass it on. And that'd be something cool to be able to talk to him about, I think.
Great. Rachel Maxwell, I'm always impressed with you. You have incredible drive and desire, and your passion for teaching always shows through.
Can I tell one Charlie story?
Pardon?
Can I tell a Charlie story?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to contest my first year in Oswego, and I'm having a stroke, of course. I can't sleep for nights because Mrs. Pappas says to me a couple of weeks before contest, you know, Trauber's never gotten anything except a 1 at contest.
It sounds like Margene.
Well, the last thing I needed to know, of course I knew this. Of course I know this. So, you know, she's like, well, what, you know, and Margene, you know, could make like gold castles out of, you know, sandbags. So she could do a lot. And, you know, it takes a long time to get that art, you know, of like creating things. And so, you know, she had recommended some music and I picked some music. And my first program of going to contest was just utterly too difficult. And I walk in and Dr. Charlie Mangini is one of our judges. And we did scrape a 1 out of pity and sadness for me, I think a little bit. But Dr. Mangini came up to me and said, hey, kid, you better be careful with that programming because those are real grown-up pieces. And that you overprogram for these guys. So you better watch that. And I never forgot that because I think my number one thing of what makes or breaks somebody is programming. And I've taken it very, very seriously. So it scared the crud out of me. And it was great advice. So I always think of Charlie telling me, hey, kid, You better watch it on that programming. So thank you. I appreciate that.
I've mellowed a little bit since then, but I still believe that. I think that directors oftentimes set the bar way too high in terms of technique and those things that are required to pull a piece off. And they can spend a little bit more time making music and really getting that connection with the kids. It's just so much more rewarding for everybody.
Well, and I tell people, please program for and teach the band in front of you, not the one in your mind, because or the one you wish you had.
That's great advice.
Doesn't work.
Rachel, thank you so much for being with
thank
us.
you, sir.
God bless you.
All right, take care. Good to talk to you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Don't you just love a person who is driven? It's been fun to watch Rachel's growth and development as a band director. And as I listen to her talk, I realize how much she has matured as a teacher and a person. Her passion for teaching music and teaching students is fueled by her own incredible musicianship and her life story. Rachel is truly a teacher who inspires us all. We'll be back with the senior statesman of the state of Texas, Richard Floyd, right after this.
Today's podcast is made possible through the support of Hal Leonard, publisher of the Essential Elements Method for Band and the Essential Elements interactive website that is free for Essential Elements users. Essential Elements Interactive, or EEI, is a state-of-the-art, cloud-based support program that is constantly evolving to provide you and your students with more information and resources to help them learn and have fun while doing so. To learn more about EEI, visit EssentialElementsInteractive.com.
Before we join our conversation with Richard Floyd, I want to alert you that there are a couple of spots during this conversation where we encountered some noise over the internet. I apologize for this inconvenience, but I want you to know that this conversation is one you will not want to miss. And now let's visit with Richard Floyd. So joining us for Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and Friends is a legend from the state of Texas, the great state of Texas, the country of Texas, whatever that place is down there in Texas. It's the one and only Richard Floyd. Richard, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Charlie. It's a delight to be here and happy to be a part of this great new enterprise that you're putting together. It's going to be valuable to a lot of people.
Well, we hope so. And it was great to see you. I guess the last time I saw you was the Midwest Clinic.
That would be true.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get to see each other again at the Midwest Clinic, if not before.
I tell you what, I just made my reservation for my hotel room today, so I'm thinking positively about it.
Good for you. That's great. So, Richard, you spent the last 29 years as director of the Texas University Interscholastic League, where basically you coordinated all things music for the state of Texas, everything from marching band contest to solo and ensemble, and everything in between. But many people don't know that you had an outstanding career up to that point. So would you kind of tell our listeners, give them a rundown of what you did prior to UIL?
Well, I decided early on, I kept looking at catalogs. I was trying to decide what I was going to major in, what I would do when I got to college. And there was this category in the music school called music education. And something about that term music education just resonated with me. It just seemed like that's something that I wanted to do. I ended up going to Southern Methodist University in Dallas. I grew up in a suburb of the Dallas area. And actually what happened was my clarinet teacher was the concert band director at SMU. His name was Oakley Pittman. And he was also the commander of the 531st Air Force Air National Guard Band. And that was during that period of time that the draft was very real. And you could get a deferment, but sooner or later, Uncle Sam was going to get their hands on you, unless you could end up in some kind of a group like this. So while other universities were offering scholarships for students to go to their school, Oakley Pittman was offering a slot in the 531st Air Force Band. So I ended up actually going there. I'm happy I did. It was a wonderful experience and opened a lot of other doors. And then I ended up going back to Richardson, where I had grown up, and they were adding another director, and I had the good fortune to be hired to be a part of that. And it was a very exciting time during the history of those band programs in Richardson. So I was the Richardson Junior High School band director for 5 years. and did all the things that we would like to do at that level. I could have been totally happy the rest of my life, I think, just doing exactly what I was doing there. We had some great successes and programs grew. And then Richardson was growing dramatically, and they were opening a new high school, Pierce High School, and they asked me to be the director of that school. So I spent 6 years there. And near the end of that time, I kind of got to start thinking that, maybe I might want to teach at the collegiate level, and possibly I might want to think about doing graduate work, doctorate. I had my master's already, doing a doctorate degree. And as I thought about that, several colleagues said, if you're thinking about that, why don't you go ahead and start getting your vita together, start applying for some jobs. You never know what might happen. So I did. I started applying for some college jobs. The third job I applied for was Baylor University, and 4 months later they hired me. And it was kind of like the proverbial dog that's chasing a fire truck, and one day he catches one, and he has no idea what he's going to do with it once it's in his captivity. But that was a very dramatic redirection of my life at that point. And then I was at Baylor University for 9 years and performed at national College Band Directors National Association National Conference, did the premiere of Ernst Krennic's Dream Sequence. We performed any number of times at the state conferences here in Texas. I did a authenticated composer series with Roger Nixon. It was a very exciting time at that university, and a great studio faculty that believed powerfully in wind band music and what it represented. So that was just luckily to be in a good place at a good time, and I will be eternally grateful for that.
So did you go from there right to UIL?
No, I was at the University of South Florida for 2 years in Tampa. They had a couple of searches. That's where Jim Croft was there for so long, the legend, iconic James Croft, who finished his career at Florida State University. And they had a search go bad, and they were eager to try to create some kind of consistency for a year. And they asked me if I would be interested in a year residence with them. And I had enough years at Baylor that I could take a sabbatical and do that. And I'd always wanted to live in Florida, and I always wanted to live near a beach. So that was kind of a win-win. And then all of a sudden I got there and realized there's other things to do on Saturday in the fall besides college marching bands. And I just simply decided I didn't want to climb a ladder again and be a part of that. It was great doing the college marching band thing, but that was enough of that. I wanted to go a different direction. So I stayed there another year, and then the University Interscholastic League reached out to me to see if I was interested, and I said yes, and that took me to Austin in 1984, and we're still here today.
So you didn't want to give up your weekends for football in Florida, but you gave up every weekend of your life for bands in Texas. We'll get to that in a minute, but first, let's go back before you even went to college. Talk to me about your high school band experience.
Well, as I said, I grew up in Richardson, Texas, which was a very, very small community at that time. Our family had a long history in there. In fact, they moved right after the Civil War. They moved from the Middle Tennessee area. They moved to Dallas County, and they built the first two-story house in Dallas County. And when I left that town, we still had Post Office Box 1 was our mailing address. But I was a part of the band program there. It was one of the largest small school programs anywhere around. We had over 100 students in the program, and we're talking a very small rural school. We had a wonderful high school band director. I mean, one of the reasons I'm talking to you today had to be because of a guy named George Gates. Some people might know that name. He had several published pieces. The Soli Sambre Paso Doble that he did was absolutely a stunning march. But he was a very, very profound inspiration on me. And I just kept gravitating more and more to the fact that I didn't want to live my life without being a part of music every day. And it seemed to me the most exciting way to do that was to posture myself so that I can inspire others and teach and be a part of the musical world that I love so much.
Well, we're glad you did that. You made a great impact. So you leave academia, and you go to the Texas University Interscholastic League. And for many that don't know, the gentleman that preceded you, I believe, was a gentleman by the name of Nelson Patrick, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And he was a legend in Texas, and he ran a pretty tight ship, if I remember, in those days. And so you obviously looked at that, and you had a vision for what the UIL was and how it could grow and develop. Can you share that vision a little bit with us?
I can certainly attempt to, and your assessment is absolutely spot on. That is exactly the circumstances that existed at the time. I think one of the two things, one clarification, essentially I left academia, but then again, I didn't, because the University Interscholastic League is a component of the University of Texas at Austin. It's a part of the university. And for the first 7 years I was here, I also was teaching graduate conducting classes and music lit. I was very much a part of the academic world. And then my job got bigger and bigger, and sooner or later we had to make that separation. But when I went there, it was to be a part of another university community. But the bottom line was, people kept asking me that question. They say, Dick, why in the world do you want that job? And my comment always, with all sincerity, was, I don't want the job for what it was. I want the job for what I envisioned it to be. And I felt like that there was the potential to guide and influence and support the vision for what music education could be, and that it was far beyond just another trophy or how hard a music you could play the following year. And so I felt like there certainly should be ways that we could influence that. And I would like to think that we were successful in that. Probably the two most important things that were at the epicenter of the things that I was hoping to do. Number one was repertoire. I felt that there was a compelling need for us to make music at a more deeper level, and to embrace music that had a higher sense of artistry to it. And we had this list, was called the prescribed music list, and everybody had to pick their music from that list. That's where they came from. So I thought, okay, if we can influence the kind of music that goes on that list, then we can make a change in what it is that students are going to be pulling out of their folder every day. So I put together what I would consider a blue ribbon committee of folks to help me assess all that. And no need to go too deeply into all of that, but there were some major challenges with that. In fact, even down to the point, to be very candid, because we went in and just a lot of the pieces people thought were just the absolute most wonderful music in the world, those pieces came off the list. And without going into publishers or names, I've still got some scars from that, to be very honest. And even one publisher attempted to sue me for restriction of trade because we took their pieces off the list. But out of that became a lot of interest in composers who had not written that much for us, and composers also, I'll be very candid, upping their game, just changed the way they were writing their music and what they were trying to do, because they saw that was the direction we were trying to go. And let's face it, Texas is a big state. They spend a lot of money on music. And if Texas speaks in those areas, publishers are going to listen, because it's a part of the wellspring of what they have. So that was one of the things. And the other things, and this is no secret to anybody listening to this podcast, but the bottom line is, whether we like it or not, we teach to the test. You tell us what you want me to do to be successful, and I'll figure out a way to do it, and I'll do it better than my neighbor down the road.
Well, Texas fans were always so good at coloring inside the lines, they were.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. But so we begin to think about the fact, all right, if that's the case, then certainly there should be some ways that we can modify the criteria that we use for evaluating bands, particularly marching band, by the way. And so that we could put more emphasis on the things that were truly valuable to our students and to the artistry of what we were doing. So over time, we were able to make those kinds of changes. To the point that there was less emphasis on visual content, for example, and that there was more emphasis on the preciseness of execution. So those were kind of the things that were at the epicenter of all that. And at the same time, it was a matter You mentioned Dr. Patrick, who was a dear friend, and I couldn't have asked for any more wonderful mentor in that position, because I mean, we were polar opposites. There's no question about that in terms of what we believed and how we operated. But God rest his soul, he never challenged me in any way. He was supportive of me. He was supportive of my vision. And we had a great collaboration for a number of years because of that. But I was determined that what we had to do, everybody had to take ownership in this. This could not be a matter of me just waking up one morning and saying, okay, we're going to do it this way now. So we had a very extensive program developed of grassroots input. Every region in the state had a band, choir, and orchestra person who met with me every year. I listened to them, they listened to me, and over time we were able to create collaborations and ownerships in some of the things we were doing that got us to the place that we hoped that we would be one day.
So Richard, the aura of Texas bands are that they're different than bands in other parts of the country. Is that a fair statement?
I think in some ways, in some good ways, and in some bad ways. Yeah, I think you're right. I would first have to say, as I travel around the country, which I'm so blessed to have many opportunities to do that. I find that there's wonderful teaching everywhere. There are caring directors everywhere. Now the visions may vary and the resources may vary, but the connection that directors have, I think, is pretty much universal. I think some of the things, though, that have happened in Texas, and again, they're good or bad, I would argue that there is an aura from the standpoint that I don't know any place that teaches fundamentals at a higher level than the directors in Texas do. And that starts from the first day that the sixth graders open their case until they walk across that stage as a senior 7 years later. They have been steeped in a very focused attitude about fundamentals and what it takes to play the instruments well. I think certainly there is a very strong competitive attitude, and that carries some assets, some liabilities to it. I also think that possibly that there's a higher focus on craft. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to go back and put it in a totally different context, but it's something we were talking about earlier. I mentioned that when I was at Baylor, we played for College Band Directors National Association. It was University of Maryland. And I remember one of my dear friends, college friends, said that everybody was interested to hear the Baylor band play because they figured it was going to be another one of those Texas fix-it bands. Was the term that they used. And you do it again and again until you fix it and get it just exactly right. So I think that there is that emphasis on craft, and I also think that there's a liability with that. And what I mean by that is the fact that I would say, and many of my colleagues who, as I do, they conduct a lot of all-state bands and honor bands in different parts of the country. The level of musicianship, the absolute just pure passion for music, sometimes you have to dig harder, you have to dig deeper to get to that level with Texas bands than you do with bands in other parts of the country. And I can say that as a career-long Texas band director. It's fact. Because they're so concerned about getting it correct. And I think that sometimes that we forget that just because you got it correct didn't make it right.
Yeah.
It's two very different things.
Yeah. I was chatting with Frank DeKelly a couple of weeks ago, and he mentioned he did the Texas All-State Band this year.
He did.
Yeah, and I asked him if those kids in Texas learned to start putting air in their horns yet, and he just kind of laughed at that. I mean, it's Texas is just known. I mean, for the great fundamentals and the wonderful sounds that those bands create. That's great. It's a wonderful testament to them. So you mentioned that you go around the country, you do a lot of clinics in all states and things like that. And I'm sure that if we weren't quarantined in our home right now, you'd be somewhere other than your home in Austin, doing a clinic or a workshop or guest conducting.
Absolutely.
So when you do those appearances, what do you hope those people that are learning from you, whether they're teachers or whether they're students, what do you hope they leave with?
That's a really interesting and very good question. And I would have to say that probably if you asked me that question 20 years ago, I would pull out a document that was maybe 20 pages long that had all the nitty gritty of the things I was hoping I would achieve with him. And but the older I get, and I think it's true of a lot of people, the more simple-minded you get. Maybe it's because we can't remember as much stuff as we get older, but I don't know. But I just kind of come to the conclusion that if I can leave them with a sense of my passion for making music and what that can mean in their lives, and that to one degree or another, I have taken them to some place they've never been before. If I can do those two things, I feel like that everything else will fall into place. That is clearly those things that are valuable, and also the reality that we constantly need to remind people that it's not about the craft of what we do; it's about the art of what we do and the artistry that we achieve.
Right.
And so, those are the kind of things I want them to feel deeply that they had a wonderful musical experience, and that with directors working clinicians with directors, that they leave our collaboration with some vision for how they can take what they have and take it to the next level with their students.
That's great. Yeah, they need that. They need that inspiration, and then they need that information on how to do it. I couldn't agree more. Richard, your wife Cheryl, she's an outstanding music educator and band director. I mean, her work at Hill Middle School, unbelievable. She's commissioned many works and for bands, and her bands have played state conference and all over the country. So, what have you learned from her about teaching music?
Number one, that you better be intrepid every day. I think maybe one of the most important things I've learned from her is that absolutely the youngest students can have emotional musical experiences. And I've watched her do that in countless occasions, and the inspiration that she brings to those students. And I think sometimes that some people feel that okay, it's middle school, so all I have to do is teach them to sit up straight, use the airstream, get their chin flat, count, pat their foot, and somewhere down the road somebody else will take care of the music part of it. I'm just going to teach them the fundamentals. And she, to me, is the antithesis of that, and how she approached her students. The other thing I think that I always admired about her is that she has always been willing to take a chance. She simply will not be denied. If it's a commissioning project and somebody says, if she decides she wants to do it and there's no money, she still said yes. And I'll figure it out. I'll figure out where the money is. This is another example of that, being intrepid and not being afraid to ask. And this is a story you ought to have her tell in more detail sometime. But when we were in Florida, she was teaching at a private Episcopal school, and she was supposed to do a musical, and the musical was Damn Yankees. And the reason they were doing Damn Yankees is that George Steinbrenner's son was in her 8th grade class at that school. And they were trying to figure out some way to get, some props and so forth. We were at a big fundraising evening for University of South Florida, and somebody was sitting at our table and said, do you realize that's George Steinbrenner sitting over there? And Cheryl says, it is? I'm going to go talk to him. And she marched over there, and 2 days later, there was a whole case full of New York uniforms and bats and so forth delivered to that school. But she can tell it in great more detail than that. But the bottom line is, that's the kind of person that she is. And if I was going to have 4 words that I would describe her approach to music making, it's number 1, that it's all about art. Number 2, it's beauty. Number 3, you get there with passion and the inspiration that you provide to your students. And all the other stuff is just the extra stuff, just art, beauty, passion, inspiration.
That's a great testimony to her. That's wonderful. Yeah. So what have we in the profession forgotten over the years, Richard?
Um, I think sometimes that um, we, in our desire to get it correct, that we fail to remember that it's artistry that we do. And I realize I keep coming back to this word art, but artistry. I think sometimes we forget that that's the first thing we are. Before we're a band director, before we're a music teacher, we're in the world of art. And somehow or another, I think we lose track of that. And our quest for the craft of what we do diffuses our ability to celebrate the art of what we hope to achieve. So I think that's one thing that we get so wrapped up in the minutia of everything that we do. And let's face it, you and I go to Midwest, or you come to Texas and go to the state conference. How few of the focuses at those events are about the artistry of what we do.
Right.
It's about the activity, not the beauty of what it is. And with the same token, I guarantee you, I'm sitting here right now today, and I bet you're sitting here right now today because of the way at some point music made you feel.
Absolutely.
It had nothing to do with you learning to play the chromatic scale at 144 or finally playing a high C on your trumpet. That wasn't it. It was the feeling that comes. And I think that we sometimes lose touch with the feeling factor that is absolutely essential to what we do.
So what are we doing better than we've ever done before?
I think we're making the best music we've ever made. I think that there's no question that the world of repertoire that we deal with is changed dramatically and is changing every day right now. I'm so excited about that. And even at the grade 1, 2, and 3 levels, the younger band music, we have more really great music at those levels. Do we need more? Absolutely. But I say that, but then sometimes people are always saying to me, "Oh, come on, we need more music. We need more pieces. I need more pieces like this." And I remind them, you can only play one piece at a time. So why not make it a great one? Make it one that you have a sense of connection with. And I think that if you as the conductor, teacher, educator, don't have an emotional feeling with a piece, you're playing the wrong piece. And you can't fool kids. I'm sorry. I don't think you can pull the wool over their eyes. There was a wonderful interview. This was a number of years ago. This is one of those I see moments that I can't ever forget. But I was listening to an NPR radio interview with a country and western singer, and he was immensely successful. He was at the peak of his career. Every song that he brought out was an immense success. He had just finished an album that was just knocking the tops out of the charts. And the person that was doing the interview said, how in the world is this that you've just one piece after another, one song after another, and every one of them is magic. How do you account for that? How does that happen? And he had this very Southern drawl as he spoke. He says, I'll tell you what. He says, I don't think on nothing I can't feel.
That's right. Yeah.
If you can't feel it, you can't communicate it.
So if you wouldn't have been a band director, what would you have done?
Oh, there were several things that I thought about. I was very much in love with the outdoors and the national parks. There was a period of time in middle school years I thought maybe I'll just be a national park ranger and I'll go count the bears and make sure nobody climbs over the fence in front of Old Faithful. And I'll be very, very happy to do that. I think looking back, probably at this point, if there had been a juncture that I might have gone a different way, it's likely I might have been interested in being a marine biologist or in some way involved with the sea. I love the ocean. I love to scuba dive. I love to be on the water. I love to be in the water. I love to be under the water. And I'm fascinated with that part of our planet. And so there's a likelihood that would have been an attraction to me. But
that correlates well with band directors because we've all been underwater at certain points in time.
and we will be again. So
Oh, as a musician or music teacher, who's been your biggest inspiration?
My friends and my colleagues. It would be very difficult to single one out. I think being surrounded by brilliant people is an essential. I've heard it said, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find another room. You need to find some place that's going to challenge you and inspire you. Harvey Pinnock, the great golf teacher, he wrote a little bit called The Little Red Book.
Harvey Pinnock.
Yeah, and but one of his statements in that book was that if you want to be a better golfer, you don't have lunch with lousy players. And so maybe to drill a little bit deeper into that, because that's a great question, and we're all the product of our environment and the people we're around. I developed a close friendship with several colleagues that began over 40 years ago, and one was Tom Lee, went to University of Texas the same year I went to Baylor University.
Right.
And we had a mutual friend, and that mutual friend was Bob Reynolds. And Bob said to both me and to Tom, says, you guys need to get together as soon as you can, because you are going to be good friends. And that began to expand. And then all of a sudden, and I guess to a certain extent, Bob was a little bit of a catalyst. So, a tremendous catalyst, because everybody knew him of these people. And then the next person that all of a sudden became a part of this clique was Alan McMurray, University of Colorado, now retired.
One of Bob's students, right?
One of Bob's students, yes. Yeah. And then finally, the fifth one was Craig Kirchhoff. But that combination of friends and combination of musical colleagues have had a powerful impact on me, not just in music, but as a human being. They're the most amazing people that I've ever been around. And I hope and pray that everyone sometime in their life enjoys a friendship or friendships like that. And I also will tell you, though, in the early years of those friendships, we would get together and talking about being the smartest person in the room. I was the dumbest person in the room. I absolutely would leave some of those visits we would have totally amazed at how little I knew, how little I understood about this great world of music, and how easily they seemed to navigate that. And it was a absolute inspirational kind of challenge to say, I want to be like them when I grow up. And there were so many experiences that we have shared over the years that are absolutely priceless. But those are some of the people that literally that have had a great impact on me and who I am. And of course, there's no greater inspiration for me than my wife, Cheryl. We are so blessed to have enjoyed. This is year 40 for us being together, and we have cherished every moment of it. We've gone through major illnesses in our family. We have gone through challenges in our family. We've gone through great moments of satisfaction. I lived through her band performing twice at Midwest. Now that should be something to be proud of.
You should be very proud of that. Absolutely. And your Austin Community Band has performed at Midwest.
Yeah. Well, we've been there 3 times. So between the two of us, we've been able to do that on 5 occasions and live to tell about it and love each other more than every day than we did the day before.
So getting back to your buddies, Bob and Tom and Alan and Craig and you, I mean, you guys are kind of like, I kind of always think of you guys as the Rat Pack for band directors. And I don't know which one's Sinatra. I guess that would be H. Bob or something like that. Right?
Well, yeah, one time if you turn the clock back far enough, we were referred to occasionally as the Turtleneck Gang.
Oh, last question. So I understand from the rumor mill that there's a new Richard Floyd book on the horizon. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the plan, and it's
Tell us
getting
anything
closer
about it?
to it's getting closer to reality every day. It the, where it actually came from was several years ago, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago. They asked me to do a clinic at TBA, Texas Bandmasters. And I had a gentleman that asked me, I kept saying, look, I've given plenty of clinics. What else can I say that I haven't said before? And he said, no, I want you to do a clinic. And so finally I said, okay, call me in a couple of weeks. I've got some other things going on. We'll talk about it. So he calls me, and finally he will not give up. And finally said, okay, I'll do a clinic. And he says, what are you going to talk about? And I said, let me think about that. Yeah. The 7 deadly sins of making music. He says, great. And I hung up. I thought, what in the heck did I just get myself into? But it started my mind thinking down those lines that in reality that most of our sins in our musical world, I think, are not sins that we commit. It's sins that we omit. It's sins of omissions. And so I began to expand on that in terms of what that might mean, and whether it's our approach to articulation can be very generic. We teach articulation sometimes just simply as a way to create precision. We look at rhythms and we think that they are absolutely rigid, but nothing is further from the truth. All of that rhythm on that page is just an approximation of what the composer heard. And then I got into thinking more about how often that we feel like we're creating dynamics, but in essence we're not. And then so each chapter deals with one of these quote unquote sins and expands on ways to address them. I had lots of conversations with composers about a lot of the things that I was trying to make points about, and they were very helpful and very interested in some of the things that we were trying to make a point of. Then the last 3 become a little bit more subtle, and that is that we tend to forget sometimes the importance of the role of silence in music and how that interacts with the beauty of what we're doing. And then musical line, what does that mean? And I go in a great deal of detail about relating that to what do we say about an actor? They're going to deliver their lines. And so is our music making telling stories, or is it not telling stories? And then the final one is the essential role that proportion plays. Art is proportion. So I've tried to take a very pragmatic way of dealing with those. And then what kind of draws it all back into place near the end is my last chapter. I start talking about the fact that really what we want to develop is we want to become artist teachers, not just teachers, but artist teachers. And John Steinbeck made the quote, he said that he feels like there is few artist teachers as there are any other kinds of artists. And so I'm trying to build a case for what can we do to expand that artistry. Not that what we're doing is not important and not significant, because it is, and we touch kids' lives through everything that we do. But can we take it one step further? Can we dig deeper into the artistry of what we're doing? So that's
the
kind
book
of
will come out with through GIA probably.
It will be GIA. Yes. Yes.
Hopefully it'll be out for Midwest this year.
Well, in these times that we're living in right now, who knows what's going to happen between now and Midwest? But based on my conversations with Ike about that could be a reality. That it would be out there.
I look forward to it coming out, and I look forward to seeing you the next time, Richard. It's always a pleasure to have the opportunity to chat with you.
Well, we go back a long way. When you were teaching at Olathe High School, you were one of the first people. You were one of the first people that I said, I need to get you down to Texas and let people see what you do and what you were doing there. And I guess that was really the way our friendship began. I think.
I believe so. In fact, yeah. I remember that it was a Friday night when I came in and you picked me up, and Weston was just a young boy at the time.
That's right.
Went to some Mexican restaurant, and we had just the best meal ever.
Yeah. I remember that very well. And you telling him that night, you kept saying, "You're the best. You're the best." That
Right.
was your comment to him.
And he's all grown up now, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
And what is he doing?
Well, I'd be very honest right now. He's here in Austin with us. He was living in LA. Was carving a place for himself in the electronic music world. His degrees were in trombone performance, but he really got into electronic music. And he was working with the Pro Electronics division of the Guitar Center in Hollywood, and was living the dream. And of course, all those lights got turned off about a month and a half ago. So he's back here right now. We just wanted him to be where he was safe and near us. And as things begin to open up, and I mean, his job there will probably be as secure as anybody can know right now. But
yeah, there's no question. He's a sharp young man.
He's living the dream and doing his best.
So please give him my best. Give Cheryl our best. Wanda says hi. And Richard, thanks for being on the podcast.
It's my joy. Take care.
Okay, God bless. Richard Floyd has had a profound impact on music education, and he continues to do just that. He raised the bar for music programs in the state of Texas, and in doing so has helped raise the bar for school music programs throughout the country. During this time of distance learning, Richard continues to make a profound impact in the virtual world. Richard Floyd, he is a treasure to the band world. Well, that's Band Talk number 10. Next week, we have a conversation on conducting with Gary Hill, Director of Bands Emeritus from Arizona State University, and Dr. Corey Meals joins us from the University of Houston. Corey will tell us about his web resource to help promote all that is going on for bands and band directors in the virtual music education world. That's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. If you would like to send a question to Charlie or have a comment, please send an email to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. We hope you will let your colleagues, students, and friends know about Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to being with you again soon.